So I'm out there, I'm a buyer, I'm buying a $600,000 house, and I'm putting 20% down. So that's, how much is that?
Well, I don't do math on demand like that.
I think I like it.
Well, welcome back, Jenny, to the Hamilton's Unlocked.
Welcome back, honey.
Yeah, it's good to see you again.
I know.
See you all the time, but it's even especially good to see you on an episode.
Well, we haven't, seen each other in the past couple of episodes
Yeah,
because
we've
we've
been
had
in-
special guests.
We did. That was really fun. I'm glad that we did that, and I'm assuming we're going to do more.
Yes, and if you missed those episodes, you must go listen to them. It is Caitlin, our transaction coordinator, who we have worked with for over a decade, and Melba Franklin, who is probably one of the people in all of Greater Atlanta with the most real estate experience. So you got to hear from her, and she's hilarious. She is like a hoot, like she is the definition of that.
Yeah,
And
I could listen to her talk all day.
me too. So go check out those episodes if you haven't. But today we are going to talk about what it actually costs to buy a house, because I feel like the term closing costs gets thrown around a lot, and a lot of people use that for many different buckets, and it's not actually what it means. So I would love for us to review today what the true costs are to buy a house.
Yeah, in fact, this just came up with one of our buyers and they've bought and sold several houses, but they didn't know when they got the settlement statement. They were kind of confused as to what the final number was because they hadn't remembered all the other things that we had already talked about. And we had to walk through, here's all your costs, not just your down payment and your earnest money, but all the additional costs that are associated with buying a home. So it can be confusing sometimes.
It can be. And so let's break it down, and let's start with the first time that you turn over money as a buyer in a real estate transaction is your earnest money. So tell me what that is, and from a buyer perspective, what it does.
So earnest money is always negotiable, but as a buyer, you are making your offer, and one of the terms is the earnest money. It's the amount of money that you're putting down. You're saying, hey, Mr. Seller, I love your house. In fact, I will put in escrow, I will put away aside X amount of dollars to show you how much I love your home, that if I don't move forward and buy the home, you can keep that money. Mm-hmm. If I do buy the house, that earnest money is applied towards the purchase of the home.
Right. It is applied towards your down payment.
Applied towards your down payment or your closing costs.
Or your
whatever.
closing costs.
That's right.
And now if you walk away from the property, can you still get your earnest money back?
It depends on where you are in the contract. So that's our job as agents when we go under contract, to make you aware of those timetables and the points at which you can pull the lever and still get your money back, or if it's going to be too late. So the main thing to know is, as a buyer in Georgia, the contract is, it allows you to, if you do walk away, and as a seller, you need to know this too, if the buyer walks away at the closing table, the only cure is the earnest money.
Mm-hmm. And how much is earnest money typically? So I'm a buyer, I'm buying a house. I have to have this money as soon as I go under contract, right? And so how much money is that?
Yeah, it changes, and it depends on the negotiation, right? How good the other agent is on the other side, or if there's competing offers. But typically it's about 1 to 3%
of the purchase price.
Of the total amount of the home. That's right. So if you're buying a $750,000 house, $7,500, $15,000, somewhere in that
or
range.
up from there.
Or up from there. That's
and
right.
and it's a term in the contract that you negotiate. So there's no set amount.
That's right. And it needs to be deposited within usually, the day you make the offer. We usually say 1 to 3 days. So we'll put in the contract 3 days. Within 3 days, the $15,000 needs to be deposited. So if you're a buyer, you have to have that money ready
to
and
go,
liquid in your checking account, so that you can wire it over to the closing attorney.
That's right. So now that you've deposited your earnest money and you're moving along in your contract, and you're in what we call the due diligence period of a real estate contract. So this is that time period where a buyer can walk away from the contract for any reason that they want and get their earnest money refunded in full. But there are some other costs that take place during that due diligence period, and those include mostly things that involve the inspection.
Yeah.
So you're looking at your general home inspection, potentially radon, potentially termite or pest inspections, sewer scopes, mold inspections. It really, and you'll hear us say this 100 times, It depends.
It always depends. Yeah. If it's a new construction home, I may not go through the litany of tests and inspections that I would. I might not bring my roofer out.
Right.
If it's an older house, if things are dated and aged, think of it like going to a doctor. When you go to your general practitioner, you go in and they check you out, and then they may refer you to a specialist. And that's what a general home inspection is. It's getting the understanding of the house, what you're buying, and then, hey, do we need to bring in a heating and air specialist or a roofer, or do we need to look at the sewer and make sure that the sewer is okay, or the septic tank? There's so many different things that cost.
Yes.
So what are those fees typically when you're in that, we're under contract, we're engaged to the house? How much does it cost? We paid our earnest money. How much do those inspections typically cost? And that's money we're not getting back, by the way.
Right. So I would say on the very low end, if you're only doing one general home inspection, you're looking at a minimum $500. On the high end, you're probably looking at anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 to have the home inspected. And to your point, that's money out of pocket. You're not going to get that back if you terminate the contract like you would your earnest money. And so that's something to keep in mind. Another upfront cost that you have to pay is for your appraisal.
Yeah. So the appraisal, you've made the offer to purchase the home at $750,000. That's great. Everybody agrees. But now you're getting a loan on the property. So the bank has to agree that that house is worth what you've agreed to. So they send out an appraiser. They appraise the property, make sure that that value is there. Typically, we see it come in pretty close to the contract price, maybe a little bit above. On a rare occasion, we do see it come in below.
Right.
But that appraisal costs usually how much?
Yeah. Well, again, on the low end, I would say it's $500 in a time frame like we've come from where we need them very quickly. Because again, that time frame is a negotiated term, and the shorter your time frames, the better your terms. And so on a rush, it can be as much as $900. And again, that is paid prior to you actually closing. So that's paid outside of closing, just like your inspections. And if you do end up terminating the contract because that appraisal didn't come in at value or for any other reason within your due diligence period, then that's money that you've already spent because someone went out and did a job, performed a service for you. And that is part of this home buying process. Another one that I always mention that I feel like everyone misses is the moving costs. Right.
Yes, the cost to actually have someone come in, or even if you're going to do it yourself, it's you're going to have to rent a truck,
something.
Pay your friends to come help you out, whatever that cost is for you to get all your stuff, your contents moved now into the home.
Yeah. So, getting moving quotes and all of that is a big deal to do while you're under contract. So you have an idea of how much that is because it can be, sure, you can do it on the cheap for $500 or $600 if you're putting in the sweat equity, but you're still having to rent something or, pay off buddies. But a move is going to be $3,000 or $4,000 for a typical size house. So that is more money that you need to consider. That's not just your down payment or your closing costs.
Yeah. If you're moving within the Atlanta area, I know for us, if you have a house and you're moving even across town a mile and you're hiring a company, it's going to cost you about $3,000 to $5,000.
Yes. So speaking of down payments, again, I feel like this one gets a lot of people aren't sure. What do I need for my down payment, right? And that depends on the loan. It depends on the loan type. So you can put as little down as 3.5%, which is an FHA loan. And those have limits and they have different qualifications for credit scores, et cetera. And the thing to remember with an FHA loan is that even though you have a lower down payment, there's always going to be a penalty for not having that 20% down.
Right.
So with an FHA loan, it's called something else. But the idea here is if you only put 5% down or 10% down, which is completely fine. You can qualify for a conventional loan with 5% or 10% or 15% down, but you're paying PMI. And that is an extra fee that the lender charges for not getting to that 20% threshold in a down payment. And that can change your mortgage payment by hundreds of dollars a month.
Right. Yeah. We always say the lender and us, we can help you evaluate which product is best for you.
Right.
If you're putting 20% down, then obviously that down payment, when does that get paid though? So we've paid our earnest money, we've paid for all the inspections, we paid for the appraisal. I'm out of pocket. Let's assume we're moving forward to closing. When does that down payment money get paid?
Yep. So you're going to wire that money, wire only. It is the only acceptable form of down payment money, is going to be paid the day that you close. So you're going to want to wire it a day or two before your closing date. And you typically have to get, because it's usually a significant amount of money, you have to go into the bank to actually wire those funds. So they need to be available. They don't need to be sitting in your anywhere else. They need to be sitting into an account that you can wire them directly to the closing attorney.
Yep.
So then we get to the term that this is the term that actually made me think to do this entire podcast. And it is called the what people refer to as closing costs, right?
Yep. The money it takes to close the loan, close the deal.
And I think the biggest misconception here is there's actually two buckets of closing costs that everyone lumps into the same category, and they're not. They're completely different. So there are prepaids, and then there are actual closing costs. So prepaid items vary based on the property, right? So that's going to be examples of you're prepaying your homeowner's insurance. You're paying prorated tax amounts. You're paying prepaid interest on your loan. You're funding your escrow account. And they are very, very different. If your house is $250,000 in, Hall County versus your home is $2 million in Fulton County. Yeah. I mean, they will be swinged by tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So those are prepaid items, and those have to do simply with the property. And no matter what lender, no matter what closing attorney, no matter what real estate agent you use, those amounts are pretty set. Yeah. In what they're going to be. You're not going to get a lot of wiggle room in those amounts.
Right. I think a lot of people get confused too, because the insurance companies, they're going to require you, how many months do they want to be prepaid?
Yeah, it depends on when you close, but it's like 7 or 8, or sometimes, you have to pay a full year of homeowners insurance at the closing table. That's part of that. And then they're funding those escrow accounts. And again, depending on the time of year, they're going to do the same thing for taxes based on when they're due. If you're closing in January, it's very different if you're closing in September. So all of those things are called prepaids, and that's what you really, really, really have to understand, because those amounts can vary so much based on the property and the price of the property, and it gets really confusing.
Homeowner associations, that's another big one, because we're seeing most associations now have initiation fees.
Oh, adorable initiation fees of thousands of dollars.
Thousands of dollars just to become part of the association.
That's right.
Plus, then you have to pay the first year's premium or your prorated amount from the day you close till the end of the year.
Yes, and to your point, that is different on every single property. So the second bucket is what we call true closing costs. These are the costs that anyone has to pay, right? Whether you're buying cash or no matter the property or where it is. And that's going to be your attorney fees, your title insurance, your
transfer tax.
Exactly, transfer tax. And then on top of that, you have the loan fees, which are going to be lender processing fees. You have to have recording fees. So those are all a lot of little, piddly numbers, but they start adding up, and that's the actual cost to close the loan. So when someone says you're covering your closing cost, they're referring to both buckets combined, but they're actually two very, very different buckets.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So I'm out there, I'm a buyer, I'm buying a $600,000 house, and I'm putting 20% down. So that's, how much is that?
Well, I don't do math on demand like that.
That's
You're buying $120,000.
So I've got $120,000 set aside when I go to closing.
Right.
I've put down my earnest money. That's let's call it $20,000 that I put down. Now I have $100,000 that I have to bring. Mm-hmm. How much would you say guesstimate would my additional? We've already talked about your getting the inspections and all that stuff. All that's spent. I've spent $1,500 on my inspections.
Right.
Now I've moved forward. Yeah, an appraisal, all that stuff. I'm moving forward to close. I've got my 120 of down payment. Mm-hmm. My earnest money is included in that. How much is the additional closing costs and prepaids usually?
Usually it's going to be somewhere between 2 and 4% of the purchase price. So say on a $600,000 property, you're looking at, $15,000, $20,000 in additional costs.
So my total cost is about my down payment of 20%, $120,000 plus an additional 15,
Sure.
let's say,
Yeah.
to be able to close that deal.
Right. And that money isn't just money that's flushed down the toilet, right? Like some of it is. Some are fees that you're simply paying for people to do their jobs. But the other is padding those escrow accounts. It's those taxes that you're going to have to pay eventually. It's your homeowner's insurance that you obviously have to pay. It's interest on the property. So it's not like it's not yours. It's still part of actually owning a property, things that, but at your homeowners association dues. But these are things that everyone wants theirs up front to make sure that they're covered. So I think that one of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that the only money they need is their down payment. And there are just a lot of other costs to consider. So we want you to be well prepared because that could change the price of the property that you're looking at.
Yeah, it can. It can. Now, one thing to note too is after you've paid all that, whenever you close on a property, your first mortgage payment will not be due until the second month after you close. So if you close today, it's what we're in.
Say you're in the 15th of March.
15th of March, you close the property, your first mortgage payment will not be due until May 1st, right?
Yeah.
So you have that time, and that's because mortgage payments are paid for the days behind you.
Right.
But when you close on the 15th of March, you're paying for the rest of March. Then you go through all of April. And then in May, you pay for April.
One more note as we wrap this up. I think, again, misconception. People think that if you close at the end of the month, you're saving a ton of money.
Yeah.
And while that is true, and the fact that you're only paying interest on the days of the months that you own the property. So for instance, you close on the 27th, you've got 3 days. That's going to lower those closing costs. But that first that you skip is pretty soon. It's only in 3 days. So say you close March 27th, your first mortgage payment is still due May 1st, right? And so that just means you got to come up with your first mortgage payment a little bit sooner versus if you close at the very beginning of March, you have almost 60 days before you make a payment. So honestly, playing around with those numbers and your close date, it's not always how the old school close at the end of the month because it saves you money, because it may be more beneficial if you're in a lease or making payment on another house to be able to skip a mortgage payment for longer or a rent payment for longer in order to catch up. So there's lots of little things at play. Thankfully, we understand them.
We do.
Lenders understand them.
Yes.
And we're here to help walk you through these. So if you have any more questions about this process and the costs associated with buying a house, just reach out. We're happy to talk to you about it. We have great lender partners we can put you in touch with so you can get true estimates of numbers and know what you're dealing with. So we want everyone out there to feel really informed and really taken care of.
Well, great discussion, Jenny. Thanks for all of that today. And I will see you on the next episode.
All right. See you then.
Yeah.